Bonjour les enfants, comment ça va? Ça va bien? I hope so. I really hope that you're all looking at me and saying, oui, ça va bien. So we're going to continue our theme of thinking about houses to think about our grammar. And we're going to be going back to looking at prepositions. And remember, prepositions are those words that tell us where something is in relation to something else. So the preposition I really want to think about is a small word. It's in. In. Can you remember what we were talking about before? What word did we use for in? We used dans. Dans. Well, this time, in relation to where we live, though I'm going to actually use a different word. So we've got about 4 or 5 different ways of saying in or at in French, and it really depends upon what it is you're talking about. What is the word that's going to follow? Is it town? Is it a city? Is it masculine? Is it feminine? That's what it really depends on. That's what the word that you choose to use depends on. So with French, we've been mainly learning simple, well, nouns, just nouns, and then sometimes we put them into phrases. We're going to develop some phrases now, and you will see that the phrases actually depend, every single word in a sentence or a phrase really depends on the noun, its gender, okay? That then influences the language that we use, the words that we use, whether that is in writing or in speaking, in conversation. So let's just share the screen. We're going to be going back to think about where we live. Just to start with, où habites-tu? Where do you live? Just to start with. And you remember we continued our où habites-tu? Where do you live? Continued our sentence with j'habite. I live. J'habite. So instead of dans, what would we say when we're talking about where we live? We live in. The word in or at. We could say à, en, au, or chez. So à, which is our only one with the accent, en, au. Now these two are sound exactly the same. The only reason we've got an X on this one is because it's when it's used with the plural, or chez, and they mean either in or at. Excuse me, in or at. When do we use which word? Which preposition do we use when? So we use en in front of a country if that country is feminine or begins with a vowel or an H. Madam Miss, what are you talking about? A country that's feminine? Well, as we know in French, every noun is either masculine or feminine. So think about that again. Every noun is either masculine or feminine. Person, place, or thing is either masculine or feminine. And depending on whether it's masculine or feminine, that then helps us to know, if we know if it's masculine or feminine, we then can decide what words we are going to use in relation to that noun, which words we're going to use. So in this case, which preposition we're going to use. So, and it's really tricky to know the genders of the country. So you would learn them when you learn the names. Now, in the next few weeks, we are going to be learning about some countries. We're going to talk about travel, etc. So for now, I'm just going to stay with a couple that you might already know. So remember, if it's a country, if it begins with a vowel or an H, we use en. So if somebody said to me, où habites-tu? I would say, j'habite en Angleterre. J'habite en Angleterre. I live in England. I'm using a country. This country begins with a vowel. Remember, our vowels are A, E, I, O, or U. So it begins with a vowel. J'habite en Angleterre. I live in England. So you wouldn't say j'habite dans Angleterre. You'd say j'habite en Angleterre. I live in England. Now, can you say j'habite en Angleterre? Angleterre. So you repeat up to me. J'habite en Angleterre. Brilliant. If we were French, we would say for myself, I live in France. J'habite en France. J'habite en France. So we use en, the word for in, when we're talking about country. A country that is feminine or begins with a vowel or an H. Now, most countries' names, most countries are feminine. Very few of them are masculine. So when we come to learn the names of countries, it's actually easier to learn the masculine ones and know, therefore, that the rest are feminine. So if your country begins with a vowel, or it's feminine, as in la France, you use en. J'habite en Angleterre, j'habite en France. So there's your countries that are masculine, feminine, begin with a vowel or an H. You use en. If it's a region, you'd also use en. For example, j'habite en Hertfordshire. Somebody said to me, where do you live? And I would say, j'habite en Hertfordshire. I live in Hertfordshire, begins with an H. I use en for in. Okay. Next version of in is à. And we would use à in front of a town that is feminine or begins with a vowel or an H. Okay, so think about what I'm saying. You would have to know whether the town is feminine. And if it is, or if it begins with a vowel or an H, we say à. So if somebody asked me, où habites-tu, ma famiette? I would say, j'habite à St Albans. I live in St Albans. So you following me? So à is in when we need to say it in front of a town that is feminine or begins with a vowel or an H. So here, j'habite à St Albans. If I was Parisian, I lived in Paris, I would say j'habite à Paris. Okay, and again, it's very tricky to know which version of in you're using unless you know the gender of your town, or your city, or your country, etc. So we use à in front for a town or a city that follows the rules, being feminine, starting with a vowel or an H. Okay, if we have a country that is not feminine, i.e., that is masculine, or it doesn't begin with a vowel or an H, we use au like this. J'habite au Mexique. I live in Mexico. Okay, so if it's masculine or it doesn't begin with a vowel or an H, it's au Mexique. If, sorry, just made a mistake there. I shouldn't have included that one. If it is plural, okay, if the country is plural, for example, the United States of America, that's this one, États-Unis, then we use au. J'habite aux États-Unis. Now, I'm not going to expect you to remember these countries because actually I'm just probably popping in some brand new language by using some of these, but we will come on to them soon. So let's just remind ourselves. Au, AU, if the country is masculine, or it doesn't begin with a vowel or an H, and au, quite simply with an X, if that country is masculine, the United States of America. Okay, and the last word we had was chez. Chez doesn't really mean in, it means at. It means at. And we wouldn't probably use it with where we live, but I just thought I'd throw it in because we would say at if, say, you were at somebody's house. Say you're at somebody's house and somebody wanted to know where you are. You're on the phone. Where are you? Où es-tu? Où es-tu? You would say je suis, so I am, chez Harry. I am at Harry's house. I am at Harry's house. Je suis chez Harry. So equally, we would use chez for if you were at, say, the doctor, the dentist, a place of business. Je suis chez le dentiste. I am at the dentist. Okay, so just throwing at in there as well as in. So if somebody said, où habites-tu? What would you use for this? I live something Londres, something Angleterre. I live something London. I live something London, something, England. So I live in London, in England. Okay, we would say j'habite à Londres, en Angleterre. J'habite à Londres, en Angleterre. And we had that before, didn't we? I wonder if you got that right. Let me leave you to have a think about the next one. What about if somebody asked you where you lived and you wanted to say, I live in Hertfordshire, in England? What would you say? Remember, capital letters for names of places in English and French. I live in Hertfordshire, in England. So that would be j'habite. Let's see if I can write it in. J'habite en Hertfordshire, en Angleterre. En Angleterre. The neatest writing j'habite en Hertfordshire, en Angleterre. Can you remember our rules? In front of an H, in front of a country with a vowel. Okay, wonderful. Right, the next one. Sorry, move it down. Okay, I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment and then try that again. Fabulous. Okay. Oh dear, my tummy aches. Right, one more time. Let's try that again. I'm trying to annotate it. Okay. So, sorry about that. What about if we wanted to say, sorry. Ah, sorry, don't worry about that one. Right, so let's have a look at these different rules and the different versions of in or at. Can you remember which is which? I'm just going to leave you with the rules. Can you remember if we say a, en, ou, chez? Which one was a country that was feminine, begins with a vowel or an H? Which one was we used for a town that was feminine or begins with a vowel or an H? Which one is a country that is masculine or doesn't begin with a vowel or an H? And which one would we use if we were talking about a country that was plural? Which is which? And which one would we use for someone's house or place of business? Can you remember? Let me leave that with you for a few minutes or press pause. And if you're ready, here are the answers. So it's en for a feminine country. So that should be red, or one that begins with a vowel or an H. Okay. A for a town. Again, that's feminine, begins with a vowel or an H. O for a masculine country, or one that doesn't begin with a vowel or an H. Or for a plural country, aux États-Unis, and chez for at. So these four are in, and this one really is at someone's house or at a place of business. So a little bit tricky there. A lot of grammar to be thinking about, and it depends on your knowledge of the countries, the gender of the countries, or the places that you're talking about. But now we've practiced those, in a while, when we come to talking about countries and traveling to countries, we will practice that all together and it will start to fall into place. So I hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, au revoir.